Have you ever just wondered what people are really thinking? I mean, not just what they say out loud, but what they truly believe deep down. It's a huge challenge, right? Trying to get inside someone's head. Well, today we're going to break down the science and, frankly, the art of doing just that with one of the most powerful tools we have, the survey.
I mean, think about it. How would you actually measure something like happiness, or loyalty, or even social anxiety? You can't just stick a thermometer in someone's ear and get a reading, right? These are abstract ideas, they're fuzzy feelings. And measuring them accurately takes a surprisingly clever and structured approach. And that's exactly what we're going to get into.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute bedrock, the blueprint for building any solid survey. Then we'll dive into the art of asking a good question. After that, I'll show you a fascinating trick for getting honest answers on really sensitive topics. We'll also compare two classic ways to measure attitudes, and then we'll wrap up with the psychology of, getting people to actually take your survey in the first place.
All right, first up, the blueprint. You see, a great survey isn't just a list of questions you cooked up over lunch. Nope, it's a carefully constructed instrument. And the pros, they follow a very specific set of steps to make sure it's both valid, meaning it measures what it's supposed to, and reliable.
And you can see here, it's a whole process. It's almost like an assembly line for building a good question. You start by defining your construct. That's just the fancy academic word for the specific thing you're trying to measure, like, say, customer satisfaction. From there, it's all about refining. You generate a huge pool of questions, you get experts to tear them apart, you even pilot test them to see which ones actually work. Every single step is designed to make sure that the final survey is a precision tool, not just a bunch of guesses.
So, once you've got that blueprint down, we get to the real art of asking. And believe me, this is where so many surveys just completely fall apart. Because how you phrase a question can totally change the answer you get.
And the first thing to get your head around is this. There's a massive difference between asking about attitudes and asking about facts. A fact is something concrete, right? Where were you born? Easy. But an attitude, that's abstract. How do you feel about your hometown? You need totally different strategies for each.
So when you're trying to measure those fuzzy attitudes, there are some golden rules. You want to keep it simple and direct. Keep it balanced so you're not leading people to a certain answer. Avoid using negatives because they're just super easy to misread. And the big one, you have to avoid what we call double-barreled questions.
And here's a perfect example of that double-barreled problem. The bad question asks if the training was informative and interesting. Okay, but what if it was really informative, but just mind-numbingly boring? How do you even answer that? See? By splitting it into two separate questions, you let people respond to each idea on its own, and that gives you much, much cleaner data.
Okay, but what about those really tough questions? The ones about behaviors that people might not want to admit to, even on a totally anonymous survey. How in the world do you get people to tell the truth when they might feel a little judged?
Well, this is so cool. Researchers have developed this incredibly clever technique to solve exactly this problem. It's called the random response trick, and it lets people answer honestly because it guarantees that no one, not even the researcher, can ever know for sure what question they were actually answering.
So here's the setup. You give people two questions. Question one is totally harmless, totally non-threatening, like, were you born in January? The other one is the sensitive, threatening question you actually want the answer to, like, have you ever shoplifted?
And then you give them these dead simple instructions. You tell them, flip a coin. If it lands on heads, answer the January question. If it's tails, answer the shoplifting question. You just write down yes or no. Because of that coin flip, if someone sees you wrote yes, they have no idea which question you answered. It gives you perfect, plausible deniability.
Okay, so let's run the numbers. Let's say we do this with 100 people. And at the end of it all, we get a total of 34 yes answers. Now this number, this is our key. It looks like just a jumble of responses, but we can actually use it to find the truth. So the puzzle becomes, how do we untangle this number? Well, we just have to remember the coin flip. It means about 50 people answered the January question and about 50 people answered the shoplifting question. And with that little piece of information and some basic math, we can solve it.
We know that roughly 1 out of 12 people are born in any given month. That's about 8% of the population. So of the 50 people who answered the January question, we would expect about 8% of them, or 4 people, to say yes.
And here's where the magic happens. If we started with 34 total yes answers, and we subtract the 4 yes answers we expect came from the January question, we're left with 30 yes answers.
And those 30 yeses must have come from the 50 people who answered the shoplifting question. And 30 out of 50 is 60%. We get a really accurate estimate for a super sensitive behavior without ever putting a single person on the spot. It's absolutely brilliant.
Now, when it comes to actually measuring attitudes, there are two classic approaches. You can think of them as different tools in your measurement toolkit, and each one has its own strengths.
First up is the one you've all seen a million times. It's called a Likert scale. The key things about it are that it's symmetrical, it has an equal number of positive and negative options, and it's balanced. It tries to keep the psychological distance between each option roughly the same. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it's by far the most common format out there.
But there's another method that statisticians really love. It's called the Thurstone scale. And think of it this way. On that last scale, we just assume the distance between agree and strongly agree is one step. The Thurstone scale actually tries to measure that distance, creating a much more precise scientific ruler for attitudes.
And as you can see, it's a lot more work to create. Before you even show it to anyone, you have a whole panel of judges rate a bunch of statements on how positive or negative they are. This creates a specific weight for each item. So agreeing with a statement like, "I love peanut butter more than life itself," is worth way more points than agreeing with, "I guess peanut butter is okay." It treats different statements differently, which gives you a much more nuanced picture of someone's true attitude.
Okay, let's get to our final section. Because you can design the most beautiful, precise, and clever survey in the entire world, but it's completely useless if nobody fills it out. So how do you actually get people to respond? Well, the answer lies in psychology.
The big idea here is something called social exchange theory, and it's actually a really simple but super powerful concept. It basically says that asking someone to take your survey is like offering them a trade, and they'll agree to that trade, to give you their time and their answers if they feel like the rewards outweigh the costs, and, crucially, if they trust you.
So your job as the survey creator is to tip that trade in your favor. You've got to pull all the levers you can. To boost the rewards, don't just say thank you, frame it as asking for their expert advice. To lower the costs, make it look short and only ask for what's absolutely essential. And to build trust, little things matter a lot, like getting a sponsorship from a name people recognize or even giving a small gift card up front to show you value their time before they've even started.
So the next time a survey pops up in your inbox, take a closer look. Because now that you know the blueprint, you can start to see what's going on behind the curtain. Is this a well-crafted instrument designed to genuinely listen and understand what you think, or is it a poorly designed tool full of leading questions and double-barreled traps designed to get the answer it already wants? The difference you'll find is everything.